Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. When you've watched more Belarus Premier League than is healthy, proper football is back. Gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
All right, it is Thursday evening, and as always, we're joined on the line by John Giles. Evening, John.
Evening, Nathan.
We've commentary of Aston Villa against Manchester United coming up later this evening, and we'll see Jack Grealish in action once again against a team that he's been linked with. He's been linked with a lot of the teams in the top four this season. What are your thoughts on him as a player? Because Graham Souness was on Sky at the weekend and, well, I think it's fair to say, didn't seem fully convinced, said that being the most fouled player in the Premier League, it means I'm holding on to the ball too long. It means you're not seeing the picture quick enough. There's no doubt about it. He's got ability. He's easy on the eye. He's silky on the eye. But anyone that gets tackled that much and gets that many fouls isn't seeing the picture quickly enough. Would you go along with that?
No, I wouldn't agree with Graham there, Nathan. I normally agree with him, but I don't agree with him there. Because I think what he was saying was that he's holding on to the ball too long, so therefore he's getting tackled more than anybody else. Well, my take on it would be when you're playing in a team that's not so good, Nathan, as Grealish is, you do have to hang on to the ball longer than if you was playing for Manchester United or Manchester City. Do you know what I mean?
So the players around him aren't moving as quickly, so therefore...
Exactly, yeah. Like when you're playing in any team game, like you're only as good as the players you play with. You know, like obviously you're a very, very good player. You play well in any team, but the better the players you play with, Nathan, it's a well-known thing that you're playing with good players. Good players make it easy for you.
Yeah.
You know, good players make it easy for each other. But we're talking about Grealish. Like if Grealish was playing in the Manchester City team, he wouldn't have to hold on to the ball so long. So therefore, he wouldn't be getting as many fouls. So it depends what way you want to look at it. But I just think Graham was a bit harsh on him there.
This Aston Villa side, you touched on it, like, are limited, to put it quite nicely. They do look to be a very, very average team. How then do you judge Jack Grealish? As you say, he's playing such a different style of football that what would be expected if he was to go to Manchester United or to Manchester City, and if suddenly you're in a team with Pogba and Fernandes or with De Bruyne and Sterling, it's a world away from what he's dealing with right now. So how is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Pep Guardiola, how do they judge him, and what should they be looking for in what he's doing at the moment? Well,
I can only talk for myself, Nathan. I don't know how they look at it, but the way I would look at it, when I've seen Grealish on the ball, and I think that there's a few players from Villa should be taking up a position to receive it, and they're not doing it, so he has to hang on to it, then he gets a foul. But what I do see with him, that he does spot the ball in the right ball to give when the players make the right movements for him.
Yeah.
It's very difficult when you're playing in the team, Nathan, that they're not so good. I don't want to be harsh on the Villa lads, but good players just make it easy for each other. And he doesn't have those players around him. And what I try to judge a player is, like Grealish, what would he be like in Manchester City or Manchester United, or indeed Liverpool for that matter? I think he'd be very good, because I think with the passes that he does make, he creates mostly for himself, and they're usually as good as he can make in the position that he receives them in, Nathan, you know?
Yeah, Souness said that the players you wouldn't like to play against are the Scholes, Xavis, Iniesta, who pop it off quickly, you know, 1-2 touch and the ball's gone. Have you seen enough that you think in the quality of a Manchester City team he could do that? Yeah,
definitely. Definitely. I think he does well in what he has to do with the Villa lads, Nathan. You know, like Graham played with a great team himself, you know, with Dalglish and Hansen and all these guys. And you definitely make it easy for each other. So if he was playing with the players that you mentioned there, they make it easy for you. But you have to be able to play to play with these guys. And watching Grealish, I think Grealish can play, and I think he's limited in what he can do with the Villa team. But he makes the most of what he can do, Nathan, in my opinion. But if you put him in the Manchester United team or the Liverpool team or the Manchester City team, I think he has the quality to really, really be able to live with those players and play well.
He's played a couple of different roles for Villa this season. He's played as part of a more of a central midfield role and a creative player from deep. And then at times, maybe when he's been at his best, certainly from a goal-scoring point of view, they played him on the left-hand side of a front three. In terms of his skill set, like, where do you see him ending up? What will his best position be?
Well, I think his best position is in the middle of the field, the middle of the midfield. When you're playing left-hand side of midfield or right-hand side of midfield, you're dependent on somebody getting the ball to you. And in the Villa's team, he doesn't have anybody capable of getting the ball to him in good positions, Nathan. He might get away with that and play well in the Manchester City and Manchester United Liverpool team, where you only have to wait and get into a good position there, and people get the ball to you. But if I were playing him, if I were Manchester City or United or Liverpool, I'd play him in the middle of midfield, Nathan. I think he's the guy that can get the ball to the players in a way that most people can't.
Right.
I think he's a central midfield player. See, when you're a central midfield player, you can go right or left. You can go and not chase the ball, but into positions to receive the ball. When you're playing left-hand side, it's like we talked about Pogba before when he played with Juventus. He played left-hand side of midfield, Nathan. So you can wait there, right? And somebody gets the ball out to you. You know, in Juventus' case, it was the master midfield player.
Yeah, Pirlo, yeah. And
Pirlo.
So, could Grealish fill that role? Is he that good? Without comparing him to Pirlo, but could he do that role?
There's not many people as good as Pirlo, Nathan. But he'd be good. I think he'd be really good in that position.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's very few people as good as Pirlo, but I think he would be a really, really class midfield player playing in a good team, Nathan, where they're getting the ball into him, and he's first thing when you're playing with players, first of all you have to get the ball from them, and then somebody has to be in a position to give it to. Now that might sound very simple, but when you're playing with players that are not so good, first of all you don't get the ball like you should do, and most times you've nobody really to give it to. In a way that top players make it easy for each other. So I would play him if I were buying him. I'd buy him as a central midfield player.
Right. It'd be interesting because traditionally in English football, I guess, and we might talk about Declan Rice a little bit more, their midfield player in that Jack Grealish role would be more of a Declan Rice, somebody very defensive-minded who can sweep up the danger and play a simple little ball to another midfielder. Do you think actually could Manchester United play a three-man midfield of Jack Grealish, Bruno Fernandes and Paul Pogba?
Oh, yeah, because neither of the other two that you mentioned, Pogba and Fernandes, can't do what Grealish can do, Nathan.
But can Grealish provide protection for a back four?
No. No, well, you can because you have the ball all the time, Nathan. I don't believe there is a midfield player born, Nathan, that can protect the back four.
Yeah.
That's the best way you protect the back four is having the ball and giving the ball to people. Now, what we've had over the years is designated players. They're saying they're screening the back four. You know, Jesus Christ couldn't protect the back four, Nathan.
Yeah.
Because you're going across the pitch. But the best way to protect the back four is to get on the ball, use the ball, and have the ball. So I think it's an overrated situation where people are saying protecting the back four. I don't think, first of all, I don't think Pogba is a central midfield player. I don't think Fernandes is a central midfield player. In fact, I think I spoke about Fernandes before. I don't think Fernandes is really a midfield player at all, Nathan. He's a very, very good, he's a goal-scoring midfield player. I'm explaining myself well.
Yeah.
In other words, he comes from midfield to score goals. No, he's not going to knit it together. Definitely not going, because he's always ahead of the ball. Now, he's very good at what he does. He picks out the right pass and he'll get goals. Actually, I think I said from the start, I see him as a goal-scoring midfield player. Grealish can do things in the middle of the field, in my opinion, that Pogba and Fernandes are not capable of doing.
Yeah.
He can knit it together. Also, don't forget, Fernandes and Pogba can do things that Grealish can't do. But that's how you get a team. But I would put him in the middle of those two, and I think he'd be very good. That's if Pogba continues to play in the way he's played in the last couple of matches. And I think the reason for that, Nathan, is circumstances. I think with this virus situation, that the big clubs don't have the money. I think he's more likely to settle down with Manchester United now, because I think it's the best available to him than had been, say, before this situation. So
Jack Grealish, then, it'll be interesting to see what happens. He's not Jesus Christ, though, I think, as you've pointed out, so they'll need to keep their expectations
if I were City, I'd be interested in him if I were Guardiola. I think he'll do it at the top level. I think he has the quality. He's able to beat players. He can hold it. He can do all the things that playing with good players need.
Declan Rice is a player who, again, has been linked with Manchester City, Manchester United, Chelsea. But when you see the reports linking him with almost all three, it's not in the role he's playing with West Ham, in that deep-lying midfield role. It's as a centre-half. Is that where you see his future?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think he's a top-class player, Nathan. And what you find with top-class players, they can play in most positions. In other words, he's a very, very good midfield player. But he'd be an even better central defender player. I mean, if I were Guardiola, I'd pay whatever was needed to pay for him and put him in the back four.
Okay. You think, say if he does go and he has played games at centre-back, it'll be a straightforward change for him from midfield to centre-back that he could settle in quite quickly?
Oh, easier.
Or would take time?
Yeah, when you have the ability that Rice has and players like that, the further you go back, the easier it is, Nathan. Now I think he's a top-class midfield player, but I think he could really, the further you go back in football with the ability that those players have, the easier it is, Nathan, because you're facing the ball all the time. And when you're getting the ball in the midfield, 9 times out of 10, you've got your back to the play, to where you want to go. When you're playing at the back, you're facing where you be all the time. I think he's quick. I think he's good in the air. I think he reads it well. I think he's made for that particular position. And there's not many players like that around at the moment, as Manchester City know. So I would pay whatever need to be paid for him in that position.
He doesn't strike me as a sort of blood and guts centre-half, desperate last-second lunges and tackles that he won't need to be, that his awareness of the game means actually he'll put himself in positions that it's impossible to compare anyone to Virgil van Dijk now, but he'd be more that type of centre-half. Oh,
definitely, Nathan. Any lads that can play and play the game the way he can play, it's got, as we know, it's called reading the game. So it's like when Bobby Moore played, he was in the position before the ball got there because he's reading where the ball's going to be. But Rice has pace and that. He's good in the air. He's got all the things that's needed for that particular position. I mean, he's a very, very good midfield player, and obviously West Ham have to play him in that position because he's very valuable to them in that position. But if he was going to a top-class team like Manchester City, he'd be a dream player for Manchester City playing in the central back position, Nathan.
Right. Another player I wanted to talk to you about, because you mentioned him when we were chatting earlier, who you've been impressed with over the last few weeks, is Jonjo Shelvey. Another English midfielder, different stage of his career. He's 28 now. He's been to a big club. He was at Liverpool previously at a bad time for Liverpool as much as a bad time for himself. What's his limit? Like, is he just in the right club with the right manager right now, or could he go back to one of those top 6 teams?
The answer is I don't know. I always saw him as a very, very talented lad who lacked discipline, lacked quite a few different things to stop him fulfilling his promise as a very, very talented individual. Now, I saw him against West Ham at Newcastle. I didn't see the match the other night. And it was the best display I've seen from a midfield player this season.
Wow.
He was brilliant.
What was he doing?
He picked out the right pass. He worked hard. He scored a goal for them. He did all the things that you want a midfield player to do. Now, normally I wouldn't be in favour of a Shelvey because I think you're on his day and then that. Now, I don't know how old he is now. He's probably around 27.
28 now, 28.
28. Well, he should be at the prime of his career, and he might just have the right manager in Bruce. And that's the way I read it. So, it would be a gamble, Nathan. Obviously, more of a gamble than most. But if I were Guardiola, I'd be very tempted to go for him.
Okay, you think he could actually play in a team of that quality?
Well, definitely. He has the skill, Nathan. He can pick a pass. He can distribute it. He's well-gifted lad. Now, he might be at an age now with the right manager in the right team where he would be as good as he promised to be years ago. Very, very good. It's the best midfield performance I saw this season. His performance against West Ham the other night at Newcastle. It's
one of the great shames of modern football that there's so much money around for the best clubs. They don't actually need to take too many risks when it comes to signing players. And, we've gone through over the last few months your all-time 11s for various different teams. And so often you'd bring up that, things weren't going well for him somewhere and he'd maybe gone off the rails, but this great manager spotted something, brought him to the club because there was no great transfer fees or anything, took a chance on him, moulded him into exactly what he wanted within the team and goes on to become this club legend. You don't see that so often anymore because Pep Guardiola may look at Jonjo Shelvey and may, as you say, look at the skill set and think he's perfect, but maybe it's just hassle I don't need and I can go and buy somebody with a similar skill set for 40, 50 million and I don't have the other side of things. You would love to see actually if someone would take a chance on a player like that.
Well, I think he'd be made for Guardiola because first of all he'd be playing with top class players, and I think he would have the respect for Guardiola and would know at 28 this is the last chance. Nathan. So there's certain things you could. Now it would be a gamble. I don't think you'd have to pay that much for him. Let's put it this way: if I were the management in Guardiola's position, I would take a risk on him.
Okay.
It'd be worth it because this guy, when he's playing, is up there with the best, and with a good manager. Well, Steve Bruce is getting the best out of him, and I've seen him a few times before. But the other night he was exceptionally good. So, and I heard Bruce talking. I saw in the paper what he was saying that he gets on well with him, and he's obviously talking to him in the right way. You never know, Nathan. But. What I saw on the pitch, and I've seen for a long time with him, but particularly now, has been as good as there is in the Premiership.
Well, Guardiola will definitely be aware of him. If you think back to that goal he scored against Manchester City earlier in the season, where City switched off at the edge of the area and he swept in that brilliant finish.
Brilliant. Like he's always been capable of doing it. Now like a year or two ago, I wouldn't touch him. I wouldn't touch him in a barge pole, Nathan. But what I saw of him this season. Last week even, was at Newcastle. It could well be that he's got the discipline that's needed to be done. And I think if he got to a team like Manchester City with Guardiola, then I would take a chance on him doing it from there.
Yeah, and as you say, 28 now. Like he made his debut when he was 16 for Charlton. He was thrown in right at the deep end as a kid. Went to Liverpool as a very young player as well. There's a lot of money in there that can distort things and make life difficult. That maybe he's at a stage of his career where, as you say, his head is properly screwed on now. Well,
I don't think he didn't go into one of the best Liverpool teams, Nathan, did he?
No, and he was I think he was 19 at the time. So
you know what I mean? So he didn't go in with Souness and these guys, which would bring him along as well. Maybe a lot expected. We know. I don't know. We're only guessing at it, but all he can see is ability. I think he's at an age now where he's hopefully grown up. He's certainly doing it for Steve Bruce. But I would take that gamble on him. Anyway.
All right, we need to take a very quick break. Lots more to come from John Giles in just a moment.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. When you've watched more Belarus Premier League than is healthy, proper football is back. Gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. The greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
All right, you're welcome back. It's 8:15 kick-off for tonight's live commentary of Aston Villa against Manchester United. I'll be alongside the Dundalk manager, Vinnie Perth, for that. But John Giles is with us, as always, at this time of Thursday evening. John, we've just been talking about some of the really good English talent that may be available and may be on the move this summer. And we're constantly talking about Manchester City, about Manchester United, about Chelsea, where they need to improve. Liverpool are the champions, so they may not feel there's a huge room for improvement. And as you go through the squad, it's hard to see where somebody would fit in. Like, do you look at Jurgen Klopp's squad and think, actually, this is a group, if he makes no changes, can maintain that level next season?
I think so, Nathan. Yeah, I'd be surprised if they don't. But it remains to be seen, because when the team wins the Premiership like they did this year, sometimes you got to switch off, Nathan. In other words, like if you go back to last year when City pipped them, City didn't start off the season very well, whereas Liverpool didn't win it. So you have that hunger to go and do it, whereas the City players, in my opinion, didn't. I can only go on my own experience, Nathan. We won the league with Leeds in '69. We pipped Liverpool. And we were definitely, and it wasn't a conscious thing. When we started the next season, we weren't in with that same attitude that we had when we finished the season, Nathan. We won it. And I think it was about Christmas time, by the time we really got back to hunger that we had when we won it. And it wasn't a conscious thing. We didn't consciously think, oh, well, we've won it now and we're going to start. It's just the way it happens. It's a mental situation. So what we saw with Manchester City was starting the season not so well because they won it and Liverpool didn't, and were hungry to do it. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'd be surprised if they don't continue to do what they've been doing.
Just on that then, because obviously last Thursday night Manchester City gave them quite a beating in their first game as champions, and they've had 2 wins since then without really hitting the heights of earlier in the season. Is there anything you've seen, or are you reading anything into that performance against Manchester City in terms of switching off?
Well, that's what they did, Nathan. You know, because you see, you can't contrive it, if that's the right word. Like if they were if the season had been normal and they needed to win at Manchester City or a draw at Manchester City, you would definitely have seen a different Liverpool team. But they'd won it. They knew they'd won it. So you can't say, like a hunger is a hunger. It's like if you haven't eaten anything for a week at night and you're hungry. But you can't pretend to be hungry if you're eating every day. So it's the same thing in football. It's a psychological thing. They're going to that match against Manchester City. They know they've won it. Yeah. Everybody knows they've won it. So that hunger to do what's needed to be done that they did in previous matches is not there. You can't pretend it to be there. Right? So that's what. Like, I don't know. When the season starts next season, they know they've won it. Is the hunger going to be there again? Because it's hard to keep it year in and year out. And I found that in my experience anyway. We didn't start the next season very well at all compared to how we finished the season. We pipped Liverpool in 1969, and we needed a draw, at least a draw at Anfield, second last match of the season, to clinch it. So it was a big chase, Nathan. So we didn't start the next season, because starting the next season, you've got the whole season to go at. You know, when you go in the last 6 matches, you know, God, we don't do it in the last 6 matches, we're not going to win it. Yeah. But when the season starts again, in my day it was 42 matches to go to do it. But I'd be surprised with Klopp. I think Klopp it won't let them ease off at all, Nathan. You know, I'd be surprised if Liverpool and City won't be the main contenders. Depends what City do are allowed to do in the summer as well, when we do go to the close season to buy players, Nathan.
Alex Ferguson's attitude was always, at Manchester United, where possible, strengthen from a position of strength. Yes. And Liverpool, when you look at their bench, it's quite a small squad. It's the same 18, 20 players he's used all the time. And even those outside the first 11 hadn't had a huge amount of game time, maybe with the exception of Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain. Those younger players that he's given an opportunity to at the moment, Curtis Jones, who we saw score against Aston Villa last week, Neco Williams came in and played at left back last night, though generally a right back. Are those players that can step up, do you feel, next season, that he can trust and can give a lot more game time to, and will mean he won't need to go out and buy 2 or 3 players this summer?
Well, I don't think he's going to buy anybody anyway. I'd be surprised if he does, Nathan, because of the young kids that he has. And it's going to be a problem, I think, for Klopp. Actually, a good problem. Because when you get these young players that we've seen, the players that you mentioned there, like Jones and Williams and these lads and Elliott, these are terrific players, Nathan, who, in my opinion, are good enough now to go into the first team, right? But he has such a strong team that they're not going to get in as they would in some other clubs. And it can be a problem, in my opinion, for him, because when you get to the age these lads are, which are 18 and 19 now, you need to step forward, you know, to continue your career. I've seen it before where players, Manchester United years ago when they had the Busby Babes, and I was just coming to the club at that time, there was a lot of terrific players there who couldn't get into that team. And because of the year or 2 or 3, that I wouldn't call wasted, but didn't march on, and they didn't become the players they should have done, Nathan. So this is a problem that Klopp could have with these young players who are terrific players. In my opinion, they should be in the first team, not in Liverpool, a first team, and not in Liverpool's first because they're such a good team. So it's a big problem. What do I do with these lads? You know, because Ferguson had it. Ferguson made a big decision years ago when he brought the young lads in, the class of '92. when he had a very good team with Konchelkas and Paul Ince, Mark Hughes let them go, and Alan Hansen, as we said, well, at that time we don't with anything with youngsters, and they went on to be a great team, with the players they had. They brought David Beckham, Nicky Butt, Paul Scholes, Neville Brothers, Ryan Giggs, and he was very brave to do it, and obviously it paid off for him, and they went on to win things. I think in Klopp's place, he's got a problem. It's a great problem to have, Nathan. In other words, too many good players at the same time.
Is there a case that actually, as you say, this summer, and you look at the age profile of the Liverpool players, the starting 11, there's not many of them who are at a stage where you'd be looking to really move them on or will be struggling to play as many minutes as you would like if they're fully fit. But that he can say to those young players, like a Curtis Jones, that I'm going to give you a chance this season, and when you get those chances, if you take them, well, actually, you know what, we might sell Gini Wijnaldum next summer, or we might sell Salah or one of these players, but if you step up, that will be your place, but you need to prove it.
Yeah, but you can't say that, Nathan. You couldn't say that as a manager, because if you say that to one of the players, like one of those kids, he could say it to Salah or one of these guys.
Yeah.
The manager said, if you're not doing it, I'm going to be.
Well, could that be the sort of thought plan then that Klopp has behind the scenes of, I want one or two of these to step up, so actually we can just move somebody else on, as you say, rejuvenate the squad with younger players naturally. Well,
that's if you need to rejuvenate. That's up to the players that's there. I think the Liverpool team at the moment are just on their peak, coming to their peak now. So it depends how long you can stay at your peak. Nobody knows that, so that's why it could be a problem for Klopp. A good problem in that I have these terrific players, but how can I leave Salah out, and Mane out, and Firmino out? These guys are at the peak of their career. At their careers, which I think they are. I don't think they're anyway past it. There's got could be another 2 or 3 years in them. But in the meantime, you got the likes of that kid Jones, and he's 18, 19 now.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be 21. You know what I mean, Nathan? Like it can pass you by.
Yeah.
It can pass you by. I've seen it happen before. It's a great problem for Klopp to have. But what does he do with these young kids? Does he sell them? Nobody wants to sell players like that they have. I mean, what you want to do is to wait another 2 or 3 years and sell the older players on and get these young players in. But if there's sort of clashing at the moment, Liverpool are coming onto their peak, and these kids are ready to go into the first team. This is the problem he has. It's a great problem to have, Nathan, but it's still a problem. Or could be.
And it's a very different situation than what's going on at Manchester United and Chelsea, where needs must for them, and actually they've ended up bringing through a huge amount of young talent over the past year, whether it's Chelsea with their transfer ban or Manchester United with just a loss of form, and the likes of Mason Mount and Billy Gilmore and Greenwood at Manchester United.
Yeah.
All of these exciting young players that now they can build their team around for the coming years.
Yeah, but they don't have a problem. I mean, the problem that Lampard and Solskjaer have is trying to be as good as Liverpool. So they won't have any problem with the players. And you're absolutely right. They've got outstanding players. I mean, Greenwood, for example, I think he's the real McCoy.
Yeah.
Oh, he's outstanding. And he doesn't make a fuss, this kid. He gets on with it and that. So Solskjaer obviously is a Manchester United are trying to catch Liverpool. So are Chelsea. They look the best at the moment at trying to do that, depending on what Manchester City do, of course, in the summer. But with the young players, they've got terrific young players who will get into the first team. Liverpool have the players at the moment who are at their peak and in their careers, who have young players who will be looking to get into the first team. So that's the difference with them all around. I mean, obviously Klopp is in the best position because he has the best team at the moment, Nathan.
Sure, yeah.
So he's the problem he has is having too many good players, if that can be a problem. Whereas the other players like Solskjaer and Lampard and Manchester City have to catch Liverpool now. So it's going to be fascinating. But there's some terrific young players. I think from the English manager's point of view, there's some terrific young players coming along, Nathan. We mentioned some of them with Chelsea. They've got terrific players, and I know Gilmore's a Scottish lad. So, but a lot of players at Manchester United, like Greenwood, Rashford, Williams,
Wan-Bissaka, yeah.
Wan-Bissaka. Henderson can come back and goal. So they have a lot of promising players there on their way. So Solskjaer doesn't have that problem about putting young players in or not being able to put them in. He wants as many as he can. So does Frank Lampard. So they look. It doesn't look like Spurs are in it, in my opinion. They don't think they have the young players that the other teams have. And the other one, of course, was Manchester City, depending on what they do in the transfer. So Klopp is in a very, very, very strong position, but he'll have that problem, Nathan. But he can handle that, I'm sure. We
have spent a lot of the last half hour, John, it turns out, talking about English talent and a lot of young English talent coming through. Let's finish with some Irish talent.
Yeah.
And our boy John Egan, who scored 2 goals for Sheffield United in the past week. His manager, Chris Wilder, was saying he should have 10 for the season already. It's brilliant that he's got to this stage of his career and he's played in all 4 divisions and now scored in all 4 divisions, and he's a real Irish success story to have him, and you'd expect to be a mainstay of Stephen Kenny's side. In terms of his ability, what do you think his level is?
I think he's up there, Nathan. He's a very, very good player. He's a centre-back, as we know. He's good in the air. He's good to play. He's good attitude. Get a few goals for you. No, luckily enough, well, in many ways, we're well served in that position at the back. You know, Randolph, Seamus Coleman, Matt Doherty, Enda Stevens, Duffy, Egan, Kieran Clark. You know, we're really well served there, and it's great having them. It's a pity we can't spread the talent around a bit more evenly up front in that, Nathan. But it is what it is, and these players are really, really top class players.
Yeah.
And young Egan is another one in there. You know, Sheffield United have done extremely well, as we know, and him and Enda Stevens at the back, like they've been big players for them at the top level, which is great for us. The more players we get at that level, the better, Nathan. You know, we just got to get... well, the young lads are coming through up front, and hopefully Conley and Parrott and these lads will do their stuff.
Yeah, here's hoping. John, great stuff as always. We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. When you've watched more Belarus Premier League than is healthy, proper football is back. Gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.